So welcome to 4.1. We're now in an entirely new topic, topic 4, statistics and probability, an exciting topic that will really encompass a lot of the things that we see, even in our day-to-day. Obviously, statistics and probability are present in a variety of disciplines and are essential to our everyday lives. And 4.1 in particular, it's a fundamental topic, a fundamental video where we'll be looking at some of the concepts, sampling techniques for acquiring data, and how to determine their reliability. And then also we'll be looking at how to interpret some of our data, looking for outliers, and that's going to be, that will come up in the last question of the video. But to start off, we're going to see that at least this video is going to be a little bit different than the previous ones because there's a lot of vocabulary that we need to know, definitions that we have to understand. And we will start off then by looking at some examples of the vocabulary words or an explanation of some of the vocabulary. For the most part, I know I don't want to read off definitions from the screen, so I'm going to primarily be giving you here examples and scenarios and hope that you could identify which of the vocabulary words applies. So for example, in question 1 and 2, we're looking to define two different types of variables. Either a quantitative, we want to see or distinguish between a quantitative variable versus a categorical variable. So if we look at number 1, marital status or types of vehicles or political affiliation, which type of variable is that? Well, marital status, what are some values that we could have to determine marital status? We might have married versus single, or maybe divorced. For types of vehicles, we might have a Ford, or a Kia, or maybe a Jeep. For eye color, we might have red. No, that doesn't make any sense. We might have blue, right? We might have blue, we might have brown. Maybe somebody has black, maybe green. You get the idea. These are all categories, and what I'm describing here, these types of variables are categorical variables. Right? This is C, categorical variables. In contrast, in part 2, we have age, height, weight. Age might be 20, another person might be 10, maybe that person is 37. Or you might have stock prices, maybe a $200 stock, $200.09, maybe a $3 stock. And these are all numerical or quantitative variables. So this here is B. Now we're going to look at 3 and 4, which will seek to distinguish between discrete versus continuous data. So discrete data is data that is countable. It has a finite divisions between numbers, between data points. You can't infinitely divide an interval. And oftentimes it will be primarily integers. So for example, number of siblings, you might have 0 siblings, another person might have 2, maybe another person has 1, maybe somebody has 3. You cannot have 3.5 siblings. Similarly, you can't have, for cars, you might have 3 cars in your household, maybe another person doesn't have a car, maybe one family has 1 car. You cannot have 1.5 cars in a household. Number of students in a class, it should be a whole number. Number of pets. These are all examples of discrete data. A. In contrast, if we look at temperature or height, so the temperature maybe in one city is going to be 38, will be maybe for temperature, maybe we'll have one person's temperature might be, let's say it'll be 38.7 degrees. Maybe in another place it'll be 41.2. Maybe another person's thermometer is particularly precise and is able to measure it even more precisely. And maybe it comes out to, and maybe another person's comes out to 39.76, maybe even more precise. And we could, depending on how precise your instrument is, we might have data points that are infinitely with as many possible significant figures. And as a result, we don't have any finite number of data points that could be between, let's say, 38.7 and 41.2. There's an infinite amount. We can we can measure to as precise as we are physically capable of. And this is an example of continuous data, where there's an infinite amount of values that could fall between any 2 data points. So that was some of the basic definitions for data types and variable types. Now we're going to look at some primary scenarios, more definitions for statistical studies. So, for example, in part one, they're asking us or they're telling us that a university is seeking to determine the mean wealth of its students. The administration hires a company to verify each family's net worth within each family's net worth. And now they want us to know what is the definition of all of the families of interest. Right? So they want to know all the families' net worth, and they're hiring a company to hopefully acquire all of this data. Right? It'll be difficult, but they still want to get everybody from all of the income in families. So all the families of interest make up the population of the study. B. Right? That's if we're looking at the entire data, all of the data, or all of the subjects of interest. That would be the population of a study. In contrast, if we look at part two, this is a more likely circumstance where they don't have enough resources to go and acquire data from each particular income and family. As a result, they randomly select from database and focus on them, and that we know is a random sample. Now we wanted to look at the vocabulary words survey versus census. So in 3, we're told that a city government is looking to collect demographic information about every household within its limits. They implement a nationwide initiative to gather data from the entire population, from everybody. State the name of this type, and this is known as a census. When we're retrieving data, acquiring data from the entire population, that is a census, versus a survey, which is a subset. Here they devised a questionnaire and they randomly selected 1,000 individuals. That would be that's actually a random. That is going to be a survey, which we are using, where we have a random sample of people that we want to get information from, solicit information from. So we would conduct a survey. So the difference between a survey and a census is for the entire population, while a survey is for a subset of the population. And now we were looking at bias. Here we're looking at bias, which is often going to arise in a study. So a television network conducts a survey to assess the popularity of various programs. They distribute exclusively through an online streaming platform. Why does this survey exhibit sample bias? There's a few reasons that might come up. The most noticeable one would be selection. We have selection bias. Right, so selection bias. The ones that are being selected for the study, they're going to be the ones that are using the internet. So that's not necessarily representative. That's going to not necessarily be representative of the entire population. It's going to be primarily the ones who selection bias only people with internet will respond, with access to the internet with internet will or who are comfortable with the internet will respond. Only people with internet or comfortable answering via internet will respond. Or primarily people, let me get rid of that only. Primarily people will respond. Another possible bias that would come up is volunteer bias. And that consists of the fact that maybe only people with strong feelings will take the time to respond. Those are a couple of biases that arise from this type of survey. So bias in general, what is the definition of bias in general? Bias in general is something that's systematically problematic with a study that will lead to results that are different from the general population. So this is one example. Selection bias. We also have volunteer bias. Perhaps we're also going to see, maybe we would have sampling bias. We're going to actually see it in the next slide. Let's go into there. We'll see another forms of bias with various sampling techniques. So here we have 4 sampling techniques that they want you to know. So how to do a convenient sample versus a stratified sample, a quota sampling, or systematic sampling. So I have scenarios for one of each. So in number 1, it says a school with 1,000 students. In a school with 1,000 students, a teacher wants to conduct a survey. The teacher selects every 10th student. Because the teacher is systematically, as I write the vocabulary word, systematically choosing every nth student, that corresponds to D, a systematic study if you're taking every nth person. In number 2, a researcher in a shopping mall conducts a survey about customer satisfaction by approaching the first 50 people. So in this case, the researcher was trying to get the most convenient people, the first ones we found. And as a result, you could expect this to be called a convenience sampling. You're taking the first people that are accessible to you and you're interviewing them. That is often considered a problematic sampling style because people that are easiest to find, they're not necessarily representative of the population as a whole. But that's a convenience sampling. It's probably the most economically, it's the least costly because you're able to find people as quick as possible, but it's far from the best sampling technique. After that, in 3, a city council wants to gather opinions on a public transport from residents. They divide the populace into 3 income levels and randomly, keyword randomly, select 100 residents from each level, from each socioeconomic level. And because they broke the population up into strata and then randomly selected from those strata, that is known as a stratified sampling. And in contrast, in number 4, they did something that's very similar. They again break up the population to 3 strata of income levels, but now they selected the first 100 residents. In other words, there was no random sampling from within a strata, and that is known as quota sampling. That's the main distinction between quota and stratified sampling. In both cases, you're breaking up the population into strata, but in stratified sampling, you're using random sampling within each strata, versus quota sampling where where there's no randomization within the strata. So we looked at, right, those are the vocabulary words of importance from this topic. And now the last thing that I want to look at is interquartile range. That is also in this standard, interquartile range. We see here, which we need also to interpret the outlier. As we see, an outlier is defined as data which is more than 1.5 the IQR. And we're going to see what that means in this question. So here they give us a question, and they show us data, or a box and whisker plot, which represents evaluations. First step is find the IQR. And the IQR is Q3 minus Q1, the value of the third quartile minus the value of the first quartile. So in our example, it is 9 minus 7, an IQR of 2. And you might as well write that out because it will, if for whatever reason you made some sort of sloppy error, at least you could get partial credit. And now in part B, so that's the value of the interquartile range. In part B, they tell us that these represent that the outlier evaluations were eliminated, so it's not even in our data. One outlier, K, was a positive evaluation. Another outlier, J, was a negative evaluation. And these are integers. Find the smallest possible value for each. So what is an outlier? An outlier is going to be 1.5. Let me look for 1.5 times outside of Q3 or Q1. So in the case of our positive outlier, which is K, what's going to happen? This should be 1.5 times our IQR plus what is our Q3? Q3 is 9. So our upper boundary is going to be 9 plus 3, or 12. So 12 upper boundary. Upper boundary to not be a outlier is 12. So anything higher than 12 would be an outlier. So the smallest possible value for K would equal 13. 13 is the smallest possible positive outlier, given that we're working with integers. 12 is not an outlier. 12 it's not outside of that 1.5 range. It's right on, that's the border. Let's look at the negative side. So for the negative outliers, it's going to be similar. But now we're going to be going below Q1. So Q1 is 7. 7 minus 1.5 times 2 is equal to 4. That's our lower bound. which means the highest possible negative outlier, outlier for negative reviews would be 3. That would be for J. Outlier problems are easy money, easy points. They come up a lot as well. So I would look forward to them. When you see them, you should jump right on them. And that was outliers. And that concludes this topic. Largely vocabulary. We also looked at some simple calculations for outliers. 4.1, we're just getting started now with statistics and probability. And I'll see you for 4.2.